surprisingly wicks.
Serving and informing the Twin Cities for 4 decades. This is WCCO Television, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And now, Dave Moore, Pat Miles, Mike Fairborn, and Ralph John Fritz bring you Channel 4's 6 p.m. report.
Good evening, everyone. Yesterday in Reno, Nevada, we were witness to the culmination of a story of disaster. We know that Galaxy Flight 203 crashed shortly after takeoff in the early morning hours. Now comes the search for the beginning and the middle of that story.
One answer that officials have come up with, though, tonight is the number of dead. They have lowered that figure now to 64. Don Shelby is standing by in Reno to tell us what else is known so far tonight. Don?
Pat and Dave, we just have received word, and perhaps you've seen it on the CBS News just a few moments ago, that the very last minutes of Flight 203, as recorded by the communications tower at Reno Cannon International Airport, made public by the NTSB, the audio tape was just the portion of the last few minutes was made public, and we have a portion of that tape to play for you right now.
Say again? Yeah, sure, we'd like to make a left down. Got a heavy vibration in the aircraft.
Galaxy 203, roger. Maintain VFR and left downwind for runway 16 right. And do you need the equipment?
Affirmative.
Roger. How many people on board and same amount of fuel remaining?
68 and we got full fuel.
68 people and 1,200 pounds of fuel.
Today, the Washoe County coroner announced that he believes that the final death toll from Flight 203 will stand at the number 67. That is 2 less than previous counts, but it is still higher than the number of victims that officials of Galaxy Airline have placed the victims at. And the coroner also made another critical announcement today at a news conference. It is critical for both friends and relatives of suspected victims of the crash, because they say that those victims will not be identified until everyone has been identified. A list of names will not be made public until all have been identified. FBI agent Joe Ferris of the Bureau's National Identification Team explained that rationale today at a news conference held in Reno.
During this conference, there are many times you come up with a discrepancy, and you hate to release a name that doesn't turn out to be correct. So the safe, sure way is to wait till you're finished with it, confirm everything, then release, and you're feeling you're on solid ground that way.
At the very soonest, the names of the victims will be released in 3 days, but perhaps even longer. Bodies are still being moved from the wreckage and transported by refrigerated truck to a makeshift morgue at the county fairgrounds. The coroner and sheriff's office have been joined by the FBI fingerprint experts, as well as 6 dentists from the state of Nevada, to assist in the identification procedures. The coroner asked today for relatives of suspected victims to send dental records to their local FBI office, but to not come to Reno.
The bodies are all not visually identifiable. They are all burned beyond recognition. So attempts by next of kin and family members to identify them or to respond to this area and assist will not accomplish anything at this point.
Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Bureau's GO team are sifting for clues to the cause of the crash. They are doing so amid a spate of rumors and conflicting accounts of the crash. There are reports today that the Electra 188 never gained altitude on its takeoff from Reno Cannon International Airport. As it flew along this course, the pilot radioed the tower that he was experiencing wing vibration. Ground witnesses said they believed the wing was on fire. The plane veered to the right in an apparent attempt to turn back to the airport, but lost altitude and struck the ground near a populated area south of Reno. But there was new talk today that the plane may have hit the ground much earlier. Washoe County Sheriff Vincent Swinney.
1 or 2 of the props were found outside what I would call the immediate perimeter of the crash site itself. Now, I do not have enough information to say whether that is a significant distance outside or not. I've heard, and I repeat, I've heard approximately a half mile from the crash site.
Well, this afternoon, another critical element in this investigation was made public. The plane's 2 recorders, the cockpit recorder and the flight data recorder were found. Those are the so-called black box recorders. They contain the tapes which might tell what the pilot had to say inside of the cockpit, that which was not recorded by the communications tower. It will also provide other data like the engine sounds and readings from various instruments. NTSB, that's the National Transportation Safety Board spokesperson, said today that recorders will be sent to a lab in Washington, D.C., where that information will be analyzed by law. However, they say the information contained on the flight recorders and the flight data information will not be made public for about 60 days. A short time ago, one of the 3 Minnesotans who survived the crash, George Lamson Jr., met with reporters. Our own Tony Vigneri was the only television reporter to become part of that pool interview. He's here with the details. Tony?
Don, tonight George Jr. is in good condition and in good spirits considering what he's been through. He came out here to spend a weekend with his dad skiing in Lake Tahoe. He says they had considered taking a later flight, but were anxious to return home to St. Paul. He told me he must have been sitting in the right place in the plane and says tonight he feels very lucky to be alive. From his hospital bed, surrounded by his mother and sister, George Lamson Jr. says it was a real scary feeling. One minute, everything seemed all right. The next minute, the plane was going down.
I brought my legs up and I covered up my head with my hands, and I was sitting right by a wall. So I kicked the wall while we hit the ground, so I was just sliding through and all this fire and debris, and then I realized I was outside and I tried to get up, and I ripped off my seatbelt and ran. I thought I was dead and I didn't know if I was alive or not, but I realized that I got up, I ran away, and the plane blew up and knocked me down, and I ran as fast as I could and got out of there.
Did someone come at that time or help you?
I ran. So the ambulances were just coming in at that time, and I was running and I was yelling for help.
He said just before the takeoff, everyone was in a happy mood. He got to know a lot of the people on the plane, and tonight, he too is feeling the loss.
Yeah, I got to know everybody on the plane pretty much. They're all friends of my dad. And I got to know the people just by shaking their hands and talking with them. It's all right. They're really nice people. It's a shame that they had to die, though.
Joke about plane crashes, but Lamson says his dad would sometimes joke about plane crashes, but he didn't think it would ever happen. Tonight, his father, George Sr., is in critical condition at a local hospital here. Mrs. Adrienne Lamson and a daughter are here in Reno. She told me tonight that she has seen her husband, and she feels confident he's going to make it. And Don, the third survivor of this crash, Robert Miggins of Wayzata, remains in critical condition at a Las Vegas, Nevada hospital.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. As families of the people believed to have died in the crash wait to hear some kind of word on whether friends or relatives have been killed in this plane crash, some people in Reno are doing something on their own to try to help. A Reno Firefighters Association is trying to arrange free air transportation and free lodging for the families of the people wishing to come here and claim the bodies of victims. They are working with several airlines and several of the hotels here in the Reno area. They're coordinating their efforts with the Minnesota Firefighters Association, but we must add to that the coroner is saying that it is simply no use for you, if you are a friend or a relative of one of the suspected victims, to come to Minnesota, or to come rather here to Reno to try to identify the bodies, because that process will be something that is done by the FBI fingerprint experts, and it would be best for you to communicate directly with law enforcement agencies and the FBI back in Minneapolis and St. Paul. That's the situation from here. We'll have more to report from Reno coming up in just about 4 hours from now.
Very good. Thank you, Don. Tonight, the rural community of Wilmer is feeling this tragic impact of Galaxy Flight 203. It lost 4 well-known residents in that crash, and friends say the deaths leave a void that will be felt for some time. Barb Brown reports.
For 18 years, Warren Smith sponsored the Smith Open Golf Tournament in Wilmer to raise money for junior hockey and junior golf and to help support the hockey rink.
Didn't want much recognition, in fact, none at all. He just wanted to put that tournament on just for the kids.
I know the hockey people will miss him as we will.
Dee Rimey worked with Smith on the golf tournament since it began.
If this were in reverse and it happened to some of his friends here, or anyone, I think he'd be quickly on the phone trying to do something in the background to help. He was a nice man. And Betty was a fantastic lady.
The Smiths have 4 surviving daughters who spent part of today at their father's trucking company, awaiting the dreaded official word. Their sister and her husband, Sherry and Steve Fuker, were also on the plane.
I talked to him about it. He was given the tickets free. You know, he said, well, I can't pass up an opportunity to go away on a vacation for free. So he was really excited about getting away and the chance to get away for a couple of days.
Fuker worked as food and beverage manager at the Candy Entertainment Center. Pattison's known him for years.
You know, it's a real shock, you know, a real loss.
We don't really know for sure how many communities have been hit hard as Wilmer has been. We do know that people here won't easily forget. With photographer Dick Nordling, Barb Brown, WCCO Television News, Wilmer.
The airline that ran the charter to Reno is based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and court records there indicate that the company has been under financial pressure. Galaxy Airlines has 2 liens filed against it in the Broward County Court. One is a federal tax lien amounting to more than $55,000. Another claim for state unemployment insurance was paid, but a Florida official says the fact that the claim was filed at all would suggest in most cases a cash flow problem. A Minneapolis attorney and the relative of the Edina couple killed in the crash is among the first to file a lawsuit. The complaint names 5 parties as defendants: Galaxy Corporation, Lockheed, Caesar's Palace, High Thayer, and the company that maintained the Electra. The suit alleges those parties as negligent and liable for the lives of Gary Stoneking's aunt and uncle, Richard and Margaret Jasperson.
If I could bring a lawsuit that could bring these people back, believe me, that would be the course I'd take. Unfortunately, that isn't one of our options.
The complaint is asking for damages in excess of $50,000. Stone King says his firm is representing at least 8 other victims' families. A complete list of the crash victims has not been released, and authorities say it may be a couple of more days before that will happen. We do have, however, a partial list for you tonight, and we stress, however, the list is merely partial.
There's a complex of pests out there waiting to attack your corn crop. And you need protection that's best for conservation tillage. Counter Systemic Insecticide Nematicide cuts through the clutter to concentrate protection in furrow for the broadest spectrum control you can get. Seed Safe Counter works on contact and systemically for a strong, healthy stand. Counter, banded or in furrow, best for conservation tillage, guaranteed.
Smart. That is what counts in everything, even simple things, like paying your gas bill. Let your bank do it. Surprisingly, they'll be delighted. Just sign up for Mini Gasco Bank Pay. Automatic payment. It's an easy way to pay your monthly gas bill. Let your bank do it with Mini Gasco Bank Pay, and you'll save a little money every month. You know what I mean?
Mini Gasco Bank Pay and Budget Plan. That's really smart.
Winter. It hits hard. Fight back with a Snapper Snow Thrower, armed with a tough steel auger, a discharge chute that adjusts 200 degrees to toss snow out of your way. Buy now and get a free electric starter and no payments for 90 days. The Snapper Snow Thrower. It makes you want to go get winter.
I get the Snapper.
Dishes for this week, I get the Snapper.
See the complete line of Snapper Snow Throwers available from Bill Rademacher at Cherokee Hardware in Brooklyn Park.
For the past 12 years, this day, January 22nd, has meant large demonstrations by groups opposed to the concept of abortion on demand.
Well, despite the cold temperatures, pro-life supporters were not stopped from their task. But the outbreaks of violence against abortion clinics in recent months did put a damper on counter-protests by pro-choice advocates. Mike Strand has our story.
Just as they have for more than a decade, pro-life supporters marked this day with both prayers and pickets. Both adults and children kept with tradition in their fight to end legalized abortion. They encircled the Capitol with hundreds of placards and dozens of black balloons, signifying the 16 to 18 million abortions they say have taken place since the Supreme Court ruling. Fighting an icy breeze and sub-zero wind chill, organizers tried to convince 2,500 supporters a constitutional amendment remains an attainable goal.
Our opposition, and to some extent the public at large, still thinks that someday we're going to run out of fuel. We know that that is impossible.
Security officials escorted a small pro-choice welcoming committee from the grounds, but official counter-protests were canceled today due to fears they might provoke unwanted confrontations. Later, about 80 to 100 protesters marched outside the heavily guarded offices of Planned Parenthood, again without incident.
I don't buy that they wanted to avoid confrontation. I buy that they don't have the people. There's a tremendous shift in this country.
After a dozen years of protest, pro-life advocates say it should come as no surprise to learn their longevity is due to the fact their fight is one of civil rights and not religious doctrine. Mike Strand, WCCO Television News, St. Paul.
One day after a massive farm protest at the state capitol, the Minnesota Senate is debating the first farm relief bill of this legislative session. The Senate, in special session today, has approved a $9.2 million package, which includes a voluntary 120-day moratorium on farm foreclosures. Under the measure, the state would pick up interest costs for financially troubled farmers for the first 60 days of the grace period while the banks re-examine the loans. Up to 180 support workers at 6 share clinics in the Twin Cities say they will go on strike tomorrow morning at 6 o'clock. Negotiations between the two sides broke down this afternoon, and clerical workers, x-ray technicians, and registered nurses will walk off their jobs tomorrow. All physicians and other workers will, however, be on duty, and Cher says health care to members will not be interrupted. Pat?
The United Way will no longer fund The Way, a North Minneapolis community organization and a symbol of black activism since the 1960s. That was the decision reached today during a special meeting of the United Way board. The United Way originally announced it would discontinue funding last November, but The Way appealed the decision. Colleen Needles reports.
In a last-ditch appeal to the United Way board, officials from The Way offered to reassess their programs and make any necessary changes, and the president of The Way promised even more.
I'll give you an extra carrot. If you do that, they can have my resignation.
But despite that and other appeals, the board voted to reaffirm its earlier decision to withdraw its contribution of $260,000 a year. The board said it made that decision because The Way has failed to live up to its promises in the past.
The programs that were expected to be delivered to the north side Minneapolis area, the near north side, was not really being delivered, at least the way the United Way expected them to be delivered.
Unlike its earlier decision to discontinue funding immediately, the United Way board did vote to extend funding through the end of March to give the Way a chance to make other plans. Even though the Way depended on the United Way for 99% of its funding, officials there say the organization will go on.
I think it's a test for us. It might even be a blessing. I think the main thing is that United Way needs to change their slogan, that it works for all of us.
By its action today, the board said it wasn't denying that there are severe problems here on the north side. In fact, it has set aside the money the Way would have received, and it's inviting other programs to apply for it. It even said it might consider future applications from the Way without prejudice. But that possibility prompted this from one board member. He said those are only words. It'll never happen. Colleen Needles, WCCO Television News, Minneapolis.
The 3 Bemidji men accused of arms violations and conspiracy to harm federal agents began their defense in St. Paul today. They showed the jury a videotaped sermon of self-described hellfire and damnation preacher, Dr. Tim Lee, a Marine who lost his legs in Vietnam. The sermon says, America was built on a Bible and a gun. Dale Luther, wife of defendant Roger Luther, agrees, said this trial proves the Constitution has been distorted.
Broke the law.
No, certainly not.
Then the defense is?
We have the freedoms to have these things. We are free men.
What do you say to somebody who walks up to you and say, I'm afraid of you? I mean, your husband had 30 guns in his house and machine guns, and you scare me. What do you say to somebody like that to reassure them that you mean them no harm?
Well, you know what? I'd really like to invite them over to come over for a week or whatever they'd want to, and bring all the defense that they feel like they would need to make themselves comfortable. We are no danger.
Generally speaking, the temperatures in the Twin Cities tomorrow will be a reprint of today. Mike Fairborn with the forecast in a moment.
1, 2, 3.
3. I can't believe she's 3.
And she's handling her numbers better than we're handling our money.
6.
Where do we find the time or the place to make the most out of what we've got?
8.
All I know is we have to. She's counting on us.
10.
The Citibank financial account is where your money can make the most of itself. With checking so special it pays interest on any balance. Insured savings from the world's most progressive banking organization. One card, not only for charging purchases, but for actually getting cash from your checking. An account representative you can call 24 hours a day. All this and more for less than you probably pay for checking. Start making the most of what you've got. Call 1-800-645-4100. The Citibank financial account. The most bang for your money.
For the 4th year in a row...
New test results in?
Yes. For the 4th year in a row, in an independent test, over 1,000 people were asked which 19-inch TV had the best overall color picture.
Please, don't drag it out. Just give results. Majority of people pick Sylvania Superset over Sony again?
Yes. And over RCA and Zenith, too.
Nam desu ka? Konna desu ka? Sylvania be Sony again? Doshite?
It may be the computer age, but business still runs on paper. And when you're ready to put it on paper, you're ready for Oki Data. Oki Data personal printers. We put business on paper.
Well, you know, my New Year's resolution was to give you a hard time and haven't had a chance to this year.
I wish we could just get rid of the wind. We've got the temperature back in line. We need to do something with those winds that we've been having out there now for the last couple of 3 or 4 or 5 days. It looks like it's going to continue at least for another 24 hours or so. Today, though, we were mild again. We've reached up into the 20s, 25 degrees. That's above average for this time of year, as is the low. And we're a long ways from either one of those records of 51 and minus 34 back in 1936. We did have a trace of snow overnight last night, and that lasted for a few hours, but again, only amounted to a trace. Look where our cold air still is, parked over the southeast. That's our bread basket this time of year, where the vegetables and the fruits come from, down over Florida. Temperatures into the teens and the 20s overnight last night. Colder in some places than we were here over the upper Midwest. And tonight is not going to be any different, unfortunately. Forecast lows for those folks down there, even though it is not cold by our standards, very, very cold for them. Into the 20s, only 30 degrees at Daytona Beach forecast for an overnight low tonight, with 22 at Atlanta, Georgia. We can get through tonight. Things will start to moderate. 30s and 40s forecast there for tomorrow night. Right now, we have generally high pressure covering all of the country. There's a little upper air disturbance that's coming down in the upper levels, and that's producing some clouds and a chance, at least, of some flurries for us. The low pressure area that's been forming back out here in the southwest is having a hard time getting up to steam. Take a look at the satellite picture. You can see the clouds moving down from the northwest. You can see some clouds forming out here to the southwest, but really not doing too much, and mostly clear skies all across the southeast. In spite of the cold, at least they're not getting too much in the way of any snow. By tomorrow, little flurry activity over us, still lingering as that upper air disturbance works its way onto the east, and a moderated high pressure area moving into the southeast will begin to produce some warmer temperatures for them. Forecast highs 40s and 50s will be in the 20s here over the upper Midwest, and the southwest is going to fare about the same as the southeast, 50s and 60s at best. Partly cloudy, 23 degrees, 65% humidity, west winds at 14, giving us a wind chill of 0, and 3008 with a rising barometer. Our forecast then, mostly cloudy, a few flurries possibly later on tonight, northwest winds at 10 to 20, a low of 12. By tomorrow, some partial sunshine, but still a few lingering flurries, a high of 25, and still the winds out of the northwest at 10 to 20. Clear to partly cloudy tomorrow night, above 0, 7 degrees, and Thursday clear to partly cloudy with a high of 25. Well, the extended forecast coming up onto the weekend, still not looking too bad. Partly cloudy skies, temperatures in the 20s both Saturday and Sunday. We hope we hang on to that for the Winter Carnival Parade.
That would be kind of pleasant, really, wouldn't it, for the Winter Carnival? Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Francis Tarkenton did not make football's Hall of Fame, and the deposed coach of the New York Rangers contemplates his future on Ralph John Fritz Sports Scene in just a moment.
There. This should impress my girl, Darlene. Butter. Oh, no. Butter. Here, parquet margarine. Butter. Hold it. My tuna surprise, bologna roll-ups, candles, flowers, parquet. Butter. Oh, she's here. All right. I'll taste you. Hey, you're really light. Creamy. You're butter.
Parquet.
Oh. Let me do the talking.
Taste Parquet margarine. The flavor says...
Butter.
It's January boat show time again at the Minneapolis Auditorium. And the place to be to preview all the new 85 boating equipment. So be the first to see the new cruisers, runabouts, pontoons, fishing boats, canoes, and sailboats of all sizes. Plus motors, lifts, docks, and accessories. Remember, if it floats, it's on display at the boat show. Minneapolis Auditorium, January 23rd through the 27th. So come on down.
If I work this hard getting my outside fit, it makes sense to keep my inside fit, too. So I help eat myself fit on the inside with Kellogg's Bran Flakes. They're loaded with fiber. That helps keep my inside running smooth. And Kellogg's Bran Flakes really taste good. No wonder they're America's favorite bran flake. So you take care of the outside, and Kellogg's Bran Flakes will help take care of the inside. Not a bad deal, huh?
We're your Blade X sales team. We and your dealer want your cornfields to be weed-free. All we ask is that you use Blade X at today's rates. We're so sure you'll be pleased with the weed control that we stand behind Blade X with our Satisfied Performance Agreement, which means if you're not satisfied, we'll respray your fields at no cost to you. Sound fair? Yeah! It is. So see your dealer and believe in Blade X. We stand behind it.
Imagine Harmon Killebrew whipping off a telegram of condolences to Francis Tarkenton. Says, don't worry, it'll happen. It'll take a while.
He knows what it takes. Sid Hartman, the Minneapolis Tribune, voted for this area. He voted yes for Tarkenton. I think a lot of the AFC people still didn't believe that Tarkenton was that good a quarterback, but I'm sure they will be convinced. He needed 24 of 29 votes. Fran Tarkenton not in the Hall of Fame. He played with the Minnesota Vikings from 1961 through 1966, was traded to the New York Giants, and then, of course, returned from 72 through 78. He'll always be remembered here as the master of the scramble. Defensive linemen would be exhausted after chasing Tarkenton for about one play. Second try for Tarkenton, the Georgia Peach. He holds a number of Viking records as well as NFL records. And the list of enshrinees to be inducted on August 3rd includes Joe Namath, Roger Staubach, O.J. Simpson, Commissioner Pete Rozelle, and Frank Gatsky. However, Fran Tarkenton and former Green Bay Packer running back Paul Hornung do not make the Hall of Fame. Well, for the first time since being fired by the New York Rangers, Herb Brooks took time to discuss his release as head coach of the NHL team. To begin with, will Brooks try to coach again in the National Hockey League?
I don't know what's going to happen, but never say never. And if the situation is right, yes, I would like to.
Any contacts yet? Everyone's been talking Minnesota. Is that any truth to that?
No, there is no truth. They've been talking about this for so long now. It's just, it's ridiculous. There has been no contacts. There's no truth to it, and we'll just let everything take its course.
Brooks' successor, Craig Patrick, was to have coached his first game of the year tonight when the Rangers played the Sabres in Buffalo, but you'll have to wait a couple of days. That game was postponed because of a snowstorm in Buffalo. The Herb Brooks to Minnesota rumors will continue, probably escalate now that Herb is out of work. Lately, the North Stars have been playing like they need a change. Of course, they lost in the Windy City of Chicago last night, and they're just going to have to keep treading away.
Thank you, Ralph. That's it for tonight's 6 p.m. report.
We'll be back again tonight at 10. See you then. Good night, everyone.
Lately, AT&T has been saying, the more you hear, the better they sound. Well, hear this. MCI can save you money over AT&T on long distance anytime, 24 hours a day. And MCI goes everywhere AT&T goes, to every phone in any other state. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't heard anything from AT&T that sounds better than MCI.
Call MCI and then call anywhere AT&T goes across Minnesota and across the country.
I wonder why they did it.
Did what?
Changed the Sunlight name to Wesson.
Well, sunlight has always come from Wesson.
Oh, I thought it came from sunflower seeds.
Still does. That's why all natural Wesson sunflower seed oil is lower in saturated fats than the leading oils with no cholesterol.
Drip-free pouring. Oops.
And a new plastic bottle.
Tastes great.
Well, they changed the name, not the oil.
All natural Wesson sunflower seed oil. Another great oil from Wesson.
We're Beatrice.
DeKalb Pfizer Genetics.
Think you'll make it back?
How about it, Grandpa?
If it all looks like this, I kind of doubt it.
truck. I'm already full.
Might as well go.
Okay.
That first pass says it all.
One pass proves you can't beat XL8.
WCCO Television.